Just found out today that tigers love water, or at least like it a lot. And that's probably a well-known fact, but I somehow didn't know that. But anyways, you know what we're reading. It's the same thing every time till Halloween, since this is a creepy book. But there will be some younger kids kind of creepy stories soon. The Hiddenseek, chapter 22 to 24. Let's get started. Yay. Okay. Chapter 22. It was finally morning. Holly stood on a grassy hill, watching dawn break over the horizon. The hill overlooked a small village. Edmund had told the truth. There is much more here than just the church. Covenant, Holly said. It was surreal to see this colonial version of her hometown. A large lawn, which must have been something like a village green or common area, lay at the center. Two cobblestone thoroughfares ran parallel to each other on either side of the green. Sturdy-looking brick buildings lined the roads. Picturesque shops or homes, Holly guessed, most with dormer windows peeking from slanted roofs. Beyond the outskirts were all fields and pastures, overgrown with tufts of weed and wild grass. The river, the same one that had been so violent during the storm, ran behind the village, curling in a great arc back into the woods. Beside her, Hector tried and failed to stifle a yawn. It was contagious, and soon Holly and the rest of the group took turns covering their mouths. It had been a tense, tiring trek from the church through the woods. Their progress had been slow before heading off. George led them to the nearby apple orchard he had mentioned earlier. Everyone besides Edmund ate, Hector chomping greedily through 3 apples, and they each carried 1 or 2 with them for later. After eating, they followed Edmund into the woods. It had still been dark, but it didn't seem to affect Edmund's sense of direction at all, much to George's surprise. George had actually been difficult at first, wanting to know who this Edmund kid was, and how he knew so much. Petunia quickly whispered into Edmund's ear, and whatever she said seemed to mollify him, though he still looked skeptical. They trod carefully over brush and around trees, everyone mindful of staying quiet. Holly had insisted that Hector hold her hand the entire way. He objected, but she wasn't going to lose him again. She still had to tell him about Marco and Max. She also wanted to know what he had been doing with Edmund and how much he had learned about the mysterious gray-haired boy. But she couldn't ask in front of Edmund, who never stayed too far from Hector's side. "Look at the architecture," George said, pulling Holly out of her thoughts. It's colonial." Holly smiled at George, agreeing with him. Warmth and light were spreading over the village, except Holly noticed, for one spot at the far end of the village green, that space was occupied by a large cloud of fog. It was wide and thick, like an enormous vaporous wall, blocking off the back end of the town. Edmund had his gray eyes fixed on that spot. "What is it?" Holly asked him. "I dislike the fog," he answered. Holly nodded, as if that explained everything. They had been up all night, and she was too tired to think about anything but sleep. She wasn't alone. Petunia's posture was hunched, and she was rubbing her eyes. George kept stumbling in place, like standing was too much of an effort. Hector stared off into space, his eyes slowly closing, then popping open again every few seconds. "We should find somewhere in town to rest," Holly said, "at least for a little while." Everyone agreed, and they trekked down the hill and into the village. They first came to a one-story storefront made of brick. Its windows were caked with dirt, just like the windows of the church. A network of cobwebs clung to the corners of the windowsills. A sign hung from it, "Cobbler." George peered through one of the windows. "It's all so old, like from hundreds of years ago." "You think we went back in time?" Petunia asked. "Not exactly," George said. "I think this is like a pocket dimension or something." "Huh?" Petunia put her hands on her hips. "Like if someone put our town Covenant in a bubble way back in the 1700s, and then there were two Covenants, one that went on like normal. That's the one that we come from. But there's also this one, which has stayed the same for like 300 years. George's explanation was met with silence. "I read a lot of comics," he shrugged. "Edmund?" Holly turned to him. "You've been here the longest, right? What do you think?" Edmund frowned, as if confused. "This is the Hiddenseek." Petunia joined Holly next to Edmund. "Do you know where we should go next? Are we close to the way home?" A look of annoyance passed over Edmund's face at the mention of home, but it quickly vanished as he peered at the massive fog at the far end of town. "We should wait." Hector went to the door of the cobbler shop. He tried the handle, but it didn't open. Locked. "Wait," Holly said. "George, remember the letter in the Bible from Abigail?" Yeah," he said. "I'm the one who found it." "The millinery shop. We should look for that." "Of course!" George snapped his fingers. "What's a millinery shop?" Hector asked. "Well, the more modern definition would be the hat store," George answered. But colonial millionaires sold more than just hats," Holly chimed in. George smiled at her and held out his hands for a fist bump. Team paying attention on field trips." Hector rolled his eyes. They found the shop that said millinery out front, only 2 buildings down. Holly checked, and sure enough, it was next to Forge, and just like the letter from Abigail had said. Luckily, this time the front door was unlocked, and they all shuffled inside. The shop walls were lined with hats and bonnets, adorned with ribbons and ruffled lace. There were also patterned dresses on display, each outfitted with lace-trimmed petticoats, aprons, frilly handkerchiefs. All the accoutrements was spotted and browned with age and had a thick patina of dust over it. Petunia sniffed. There was definitely an odor about the place, the mustiness of cloth slowly decaying over centuries. Hector dropped to the floor, lying down on his back, his arms spread wide. George quickly followed him. Holly wanted to explore, to search for anything that might have been left behind by Abigail. But she was so tired. She lay down on the floor. It wasn't exactly comfortable, but they had a roof over their heads, and nothing was chasing them, for the moment at least. Holly let herself relax. "Wait," Petunia said. She dashed to the shelves, returning with an armload of uncut fabric. She tossed it down. "Blankets," she smiled. "We're close enough." "Good idea," George said, grabbing one from the stack. They each took a blanket, wrapping themselves and getting comfortable, except for Edmund, who floated the blanket neatly and sat on it, his legs crossed and his posture perfectly straight. "Man," Petunia stretched, "I haven't slept with a blanket since I don't know when." She chuckled. "Well, since Oliver showed up and dragged me off. That's what I get for showing off, I guess. I just knew I could hide somewhere my cousins would never find me. And guess what? They never did. Just gave up looking." She made a sound with her tongue as they all settled in. "What happened to you, George? How did it happen for you?" George adjusted his glasses, his face turning red. That seemed to happen a lot. My birthday party. Went under my bed to hide and, fell asleep. What? Petunia laughed. I was tired, George shrugged. I ate a lot of cake. Petunia laughed some more, but Holly couldn't join in. She knew what was coming next. They were going to ask her how she'd gotten here. She looked at Hector. He wasn't smiling either. Edmund, Holly said, hoping to delay the inevitable for as long as possible. How did you first come to the Hiddenseek? I think, Edmund said, his gray eyes growing distant. I think I've always been here. I don't like talking about it. It's not very fun. Hearing the word fun caused Petunia to sit straight up. Holly remembered. That's why he left Marco, Max, and Petunia. He said he wasn't having any fun. Don't worry about it, Edmund, Petunia said, glaring at him. You don't have to say anything. What about you two? She pointed to Hector and Holly. You came here together, right? How did that work? Hector frowned at Holly. He was shaking his head no. Seeing that made Holly instantly angry. He was still just thinking about himself. Why shouldn't she tell everyone what happened? Hector and his friends tricked me into playing hide and seek, she said. Then they left me in the park. Holly, Hector yelled. What? It's the truth. Holly had missed Hector so much when they'd been separated. She'd been scared that he'd be lost forever. But that didn't mean she didn't deserve to be mad. Of course she was still mad. Hector kicked off his blanket. It's not that simple. Sure it is, Holly said. I'm here and it's your fault. See? Simple. I'm here too, he whined. Also your fault. Ugh, Hector said. He grabbed his blanket and stomped over to the far end of the store. He curled up in a corner, his back to everyone. Hector, Petunia called to him. Let him sulk, Holly huffed. Come on, he's your brother. Whatever, Holly rolled her eyes. If we're going to rest, let's rest. Edmund got up and walked to the back of the shop, near Hector. He didn't say anything. He sat down with his back to Hector, facing Holly and the others. It was almost like he was standing guard. Petunia and George gave each other another look, but eventually they put their heads down. Soon all was silent. Holly closed her eyes. She didn't know why Hector was so upset. He knew what he had done. If he didn't like her talking about it, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. Finally, exhaustion took over, as Holly drifted off to sleep, though Petunia's words rang in her ears. He's your brother. Yeah, he was her brother. That was why it still hurt. That was chapter 22. I need water. My throat is so sore right now. Oh. Nothing happened. Yeah, okay. Anyways, chapter 23. A cold touch on the arm nudged Hector awake. Huh? He said. Holly? He opened his eyes. It wasn't Holly. Edmund stood over him, holding a finger to his lips. He pointed to the door, then motioned for Hector to come with him. Hector got up and followed. They snuck past Petunia and George, who were still sprawled out on the floor, clutching their makeshift blankets. He didn't see Holly, though. He tried not to worry. Probably went to the bathroom somewhere, he told himself. She wouldn't just leave him, no matter how angry she was. Edmund gently pushed the front door open, and he and Hector slipped through. Keep your voices low, Edmund said. I wouldn't want to wake the others. Hector squinted. The sun was now high in the sky. Okay, what is it? Is it Holly? In a sense. Edmund gave a small, formal bow. Are you ready to depart? Huh? We found your sister, Edmund said. Now we can play a new game. At first, Hector thought he was joking, but his face was completely serious. Edmund, Hector said, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not playing anything. We're trying to get home. I knew you would say that. Edmund harped. Why does everyone want to go home? Why? Hector sputtered. So we don't end up as statues. So we can see our families again. He sighed. So Holly doesn't hate me anymore. Your sister, Edmund scowled. You are quarreling with her. Yeah, quarreling, Hector laughed. Edmund had such a strange way of talking. She just had to make sure everyone knows what a screw-up I am. No big deal. She upsets you, Edmund said. She always thinks she's better than me at everything. Just once I'd like to. Hector trailed off. Something had occurred to him. Hey, you know the way home, right? That's what you said, back when we first met. Edmund just stared at Hector. It was weird. Do you think you could tell me? Hector asked. If Hector figured out the way home, that would totally make up for everything. He'd be the hero. Holly would forgive him for sure. If I tell you, Edmund said, you'll leave. Yes, Hector said. That would be the point. A cloud seemed to pass over Edmund's face. He glowered, his gray, unblinking eyes boiling with mounting fury. Then suddenly his expression cleared. A look of understanding dawned on Edmund. He began bobbing his head up and down as if agreeing to something. Slowly he gave Hector a slight, closed-lipped smile. I'm going to help you, he said. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Wonder what that means. And I also wonder why. Why he's not telling them. Because, why would they? What? Okay. Sorry, that was annoying. Okay, chapter 4. 18th August, 1737. Dear Abigail, I expect this letter to find you in a more composed and agreeable humor than when we last met. Coming to the manor uninvited was on its own a breach of etiquette. Your belligerent disposition toward my wife was unacceptable. Your accusations of witchcraft unfounded, and your loss of control an embarrassment for all involved. I have negotiated an extension of your longings at the millinery shop. This arrangement will expire in 3 months' time. Following that, your fate is your own. You will find enclosed a small sum of money, which I expect you to squander, but which I hope you will prudently apply towards securing a more stable position within the community. I have also sent a tincture adjunct for calming your nerves, prepared by my wife. There is no witchcraft in it. The ingredients are all of nature, including a modicum of generosity and goodwill, qualities in which I find you will be harmfully deficient. I hardly recognize in you now the joyful compassion that you were to me in our youth. These shall be my final words on this matter, and to you, your brother no more, Oliver. Holly came to the end of the letter. She lingered on the last line for a moment. Was that really possible? She wondered. Had he really done that? Cut his sister out of his life forever? Then her eyes jumped back to the top, reading the entire letter again. She had woken before the others, too anxious to begin searching the shop for anything that Abigail might have left behind. She had tiptoed around them and found a narrow wooden staircase leading to a small apartment on the second floor. The room was cluttered with fabric and sewing materials, including an old-fashioned spinning wheel that still held a large spool of thread. There was also a little cot in the back, and underneath it, Holly had found a stack of letters. Most were mundane or didn't reveal anything new. There was a response from the pastor Abigail had written to, but he mostly just quoted from scripture. This letter, though, was the clue she had been looking for. The manor, the home of the witch. Holly bet there would be even more clues there. Maybe even the way back home, if that was where the witch actually lived. And then the small matter of how the letter was signed. Your brother no more, Oliver. What were the odds that this was a different Oliver? An Oliver who just happened to be married to someone who might be a witch who could turn into a raven? Oliver was married to the woman in black. Oliver was married to it. Holly heard voices downstairs. Everyone else was finally awake. She couldn't wait to tell them what she'd found. She grasped the letter and bounded down the stairs. But why would Edmund just tell you? George was asking Hector. Why not take us there himself? He doesn't really like the rest of you, Hector said. Sorry. Petunia scowled. I knew this would happen. Holly joined them. What's going on? Petunia folded her arms and glared at Hector. Edmund left. He left? Holly said. Why? Where did he go? Hector spun around, triumphant. He was beaming with pride. Edmund told me where to go. He told me the way home. Let me guess, Holly said. It's at a manor house. George's and Petunia's mouth popped open with surprise. Hector rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. How did you know that? George asked. Holly unfolded the letter from Oliver. I found this upstairs. Take a look. George took the letter and read it out loud. He and Petunia had the same reaction as Holly. Oliver is married to it? Petunia said. Ew. This confirms that they lived in a manor. George said. That's Hector's story, too. It's not a story, Hector said defensively. It's true. Edmund told me. Plus, he said the exit is in a fountain. You didn't find that in a letter. What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean by exit? George asked. I mean the way home, Hector said, sounding exasperated. Holly narrowed her eyes at Hector. Did he say what we should do at the fountain? No, Hector frowned. Did he say where the fountain was? No. Did you ask? No. Why didn't you ask? Because I didn't, Hector yelled. Sorry I didn't do everything perfectly. Everyone stared at Hector. His face quickly went from angry to embarrassed. Good work, George said, awkwardly breaking the silence. Everyone, real good work. They decided to leave right away to make the most of the daylight. There was no telling what they would encounter at the manor house, and they all agreed that it would be too risky to search it at night in the dark. They finished off their apples for breakfast and exited the millinery shop onto the cobblestone thoroughfare. From the position of the sun, it looked to be sometime in the afternoon. The weather was cool, like that of early spring, but always gray and dim. Even the sun seemed subdued, its light weak and dull, as if covered by a veil. They had stepped inside a shadow. Holly felt and like a shadow. The veil of gloom clung to them, following them, never letting go. The manor house, according to Hector, was at the end of the street, in front of the village green. But if there was a house there, it was obscured by the wall of fog Holly had noticed earlier. It loomed before them like a dark thundercloud, stretching across the village and into the fields and forest beyond. Just at the edge of the foreboding mist, there was an ox cart, empty and abandoned. "That's," George pointed. "Oliver," Holly said. "He must be near." She glanced around nervously. She had no idea what Oliver might be doing here, and she didn't want to find out. "We should hurry and find the house." "I'm not going through that fog," Hector said. Edmund was scared of it. "We can look for a way around?" George suggested. Holly approached cautiously. The fog itself was mesmerizing. It swirled and shifted as if agitated, as if alive. There were dark shadows, too, deep inside. The shadows almost looked like people, their long arms waving, beckoning. "Holly," George said, "careful, back up from there." "Okay," she said, but she didn't move. What if there is no way around the fog? She wondered. They'd have to go through it anyways. They'd just be wasting time, wasting daylight. "Holly," George shouted. A wisp of fog lashed out like a tentacle, striking Holly, swirling around her. She felt it pulling her, reeling her in. "Help!" Holly shouted. George, Petunia, and Hector ran to her. They grabbed her, trying to yank her back, but the fog encircling Holly split apart. It spread, surrounding them. In moments, it covered them completely. Then all was cold and lost and endlessly dark. "What did you do?" Hector shouted at her. "Nothing," Holly yelled back, but the fog whirled and howled around them, swallowing her words, swallowing everything. At last the fog cleared, parting like a curtain drawn back at the opening of a play. Holly realized they were indoors, inside a house, in a hallway. There was a picture on the wall, a picture she would have recognized anywhere. That was chapters 20 through 24. I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Maybe. And share to your friends for more awesome videos like this. Bye.